great thing about being out in the countryside is, even if it's in the middle of Alaska or it's in your local country park, the peace and tranquility give you a chance to ponder on the great problems of life, like Brexit, world peace, climate change. But no, I'm not dwelling on any of those subjects. I'm trying to solve the big puzzle as to why people who join clubs and take up hobbies always wear uniforms. So what I mean is, if you join a cycling club, do you need to suddenly dress in garish coloured lycra? You might join the Lawn Green Bowls Club. Why do you have to wear white to roll a ball from one end of the grass to the other? And what about golf and sailing? God forbid you're seen in the clubhouse without a prestigious branded pullover. And what about me? Why the hell am I walking around as though I've just stepped out of a Ray Mears documentary or an Indiana Jones movie? Come on, what's that all about? Well, when I find out, I'll let you know. Well, having failed to solve those problems I was pondering, I'll let you know what we're really going to do. We're going to take a look at 2 or 3 things that might help you survive in a pine forest. Now, before I start, I should say that a lot of my knowledge I have to credit to a lovely gentleman by the name of John Lofty Wiseman. Now, Lofty, I wouldn't have wanted to get into a ruck with him when he was younger, but even now, as an elderly gentleman who walks with a stick, I still wouldn't, because I reckon he probably can show me more ways of killing me with that stick than I could ever dream of. Now, one of the things he taught me was to always use the acronym PLAN. Protection, location, acquisition, navigation. We're going to have a quick look at protection. Protection is from the elements, because the first thing that's going to kill you before you get hungry, thirsty, is the weather. Heat, cold. It's going to get you first. So let's have a look at a couple of shelters that you could easily build if you were stuck in a pine forest.
This shelter is constructed with ferns and debris from forest floor, but pine branches would do the same job. In Arctic conditions, the pine tree can form a natural shelter. As the snow builds over the lower branches, it forms a roof. This shelter is under construction. By digging down under the snow-laden branches, then infilled in the front, you'd have a nice cosy shelter that would protect us from the elements. I found this partially constructed shelter in the forest. It's basically the base frame, and you can cover this with pine branches, any of the leaves and debris from the forest floor, and before you've got yourself a nice shelter.
As you can see here, we've already got a branch that's quite full and would form the basis of a structure over our frame. It won't take a lot to infill that and make it waterproof. These young trees, they'd be ideal to cut down, chop all these branches off, use the trunk to make the frame with, and then use the small branches to cover it over with. They're also ideal to lay on the floor of your shelter and give you good insulation from the cold. Now, you might want something to bind your shelter together with, and there's a lot of things you can use in nature, but here in the pine forest there's one thing that you might not be aware of, because you're walking over it all the time, and that's the roots to the trees. So what we're going to do is have a little dig around. The roots are usually pretty shallow to the surface, and we're going to see if we can find one. To do that, I've sharpened a stick because I don't want to use my knife and blunt it, so we'll go have a dig around with this and see what we can find. So by following this route down, what we have found is a little short one. It's not as long as I wanted. I've had them 10 times longer than this before. But just for the demonstration, this will suffice. A good place to start is to find a root that's already exposed and then trace its root. Trace the root's root all the way until it starts to thin out. And that's where you'll find these thinner pieces, sometimes short, sometimes they can go for metres. So what we're going to do is cut that off and see whether we can do something with that as well. Now I should do this without my glasses on, just in case in a real survival situation I didn't have my glasses. But due to the fact that I don't want to chop my fingers off, which I may do anyway, I'm going to put them on. So what I want to do is, it's a little bit short that, but if it was twice as long I could maybe do more with it. So what I'm going to do is split it down the middle, hopefully. Okay, I've got the first split in there, got the knife there, hopefully I won't lose it. I'm going to start peeling it apart now, very gently. And at the moment I'm pulling this side here down, but as that starts to get thin out a little bit, I'm going to start pulling the other side. And it takes the cut the other way. It's starting to thin out over here again, so we're going to start pulling that one down more. Are you bored yet? You will be. Shall we cut here and stop fannying about and get to the bottom? So now we've worked our way down it, what we've got here is 2 pieces of twine, which we can use individually. We could join them together, and it's quite flexible at the moment. You need to tie knots in it like that, or almost like that. Let's give it another go. And that would then give us a reasonable length of rope, string, to use to tie our shelter up. Now the only downside with this stuff is, when it really dries out, it becomes brittle and breaks. But just for an emergency shelter, it'll be fine. And if you get some long pieces, you can plait them together and you can make a really strong rope. So there we go. String from the bottom of a pine tree. Lovely. Now you might think there's not a lot to eat in the pine forest, but this tree can give you a lot of nutrition. We won't look at the food at the minute, we'll just think about getting ourselves a drink. And the pine needles from this tree can make a really nice drink, and they're very healthy. Too many health benefits for me to go into, but they do contain a lot of vitamin C and vitamin A. A lot of early explorers in the northern hemisphere died because they didn't have that piece of knowledge. Now I need some pine needle tea, and there ain't no way that I'm climbing up there to get some pine needles. Here we've got some younger trees. They're at a height that I can reach. Of course, not everything always goes to plan. You saw me earlier find the ideal tree with some nice fresh pine needles, which I was supposed to pick. I went to switch the camera off and wandered off, and I'm now in a deciduous forest where there isn't a lot of pine needles. So unfortunately I'm about half a mile away from where the last lot were, so I'm now heading towards another pine forest where hopefully I can find some new ones. Now, one of the other benefits about pine needles that I didn't mention was that they say that they reduce the aging process. So as you can tell, I haven't been eating, drinking or doing anything with pine needles all my life. I've been out for a few hours and I'm getting peckish, so I'm going to have a look and see if I can find something to eat in here. Now you might have thought I was looking for some insects in here, but I wasn't. What I'm trying to do is get to the cambium layer, which is this white layer between the bark, and this is the hard wood of the tree. And this very thin layer here is very edible, full of carbohydrates, all things that will go nicely with your pine tea to sustain you. Well, we've got a little handful, and got a very distinct flavour, piney flavour, but this could keep us going for quite a while. There's a lot of carbohydrates. Doesn't taste as good as some people would have you believe, but it can also be dried and ground down and used as flour. But obviously my little handful isn't going to go that far. Now, I'm not going to cut any more off this because I don't want to damage the tree. I've already damaged it a little bit, but it'll repair itself. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now then, if we were in a real situation and I was getting really hungry, we'd just cut the bugger down and eat the bloody lot. There you go. Pine tree. Yummy. Now, the one thing you can find to eat in the forest is mushrooms. But my advice is leave them alone. If you're not an expert, now I do know an expert, he's been eating mushrooms from the forest all his life. And the reason I think he's an expert is because he isn't dead yet. But unless you're with somebody who really knows what they're doing with mushrooms, don't touch them. So we've got our shelter built, we've had something to eat, we want to get our pine needle tea on now, but we need a fire. Now the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use one of the damaged branches off this pine tree. But, as you know, I'm not the biggest bloke in the world, so how am I going to get it? There's one or two things going to happen here. Either I'm going to get fed up and go home, or I'm going to hurt myself with this. So, what we need is to find something that's easier to get at. Now, the good thing about pine forests is the roots are very shallow, and it doesn't take a lot of wind to blow one down. So let's see if we can find one. have it. Pine tree laid down. What we're looking for is branches like this, or this one here, that have been broken off and the tree has tried to repair itself, and it's sent all that lovely resin into this broken off branch. Now all we've got to do is saw that off, get some flakings off it, and we should have the ingredients to start a fire. Now I know you're thinking this is pretty slick work, this. Shelter, tea, food off the tree, and now we've got the fire, or we will have. Not the case really. I mean, I've been walking around these woods for days until I find exactly what I want. You know, it's like these TV shows, like Saturday Morning Kitchen. They get up there, they cook a lovely meal, and it's all done within 5 minutes and served up. What a lot of rubbish. No, in real life, we go to the supermarket, we sit in traffic, we get there, we can't find a space that's big enough to open the car doors without damaging something. When we get in the supermarket, they've moved everything, haven't they? What was there last week on the shelf isn't there anymore. By the time we get home, we're so frustrated, we just want to forget it, open the fridge and have a beer. And of course, they've already got something in the oven that they've cooked previously. Well, I'm no different. Here's one I prepared earlier. Now I am going to be honest, this did come off this tree. Anyway, back to the analogy of the kitchen. Have you ever seen James Martin wash any of those pots up after he's finished his show? I don't think so. No, so life isn't as simple as they make it seem on television. Okay, this is called fatwood in the trade. I don't know why it's called fatwood, but if you have a close look at it, you can see all the resin, which is highly flammable, and that's what we're after, to try and put a spark into it and get a fire going. So we've got our little pile of fatwood shavings. Obviously if we're going to make a fire we would need a bigger pile than this, and we'd have all our other tinder ready to go on it. But just for this demonstration, this little pile is going to be enough. So hopefully 1 or 2 strikes and we should have fire here. And the great thing about this stuff is it actually burns for quite a while after you light it. There we go. 3rd strike. Time to get some tea on. Okay, as you can see, we haven't got a real fire. Now if we're going to set up a proper camp with a real fire and everything, it'd take all day, and we haven't got all day. Life's too short for that. So I am going to do the pine needle tea. What I need to do is wait for this water to come to the boil, then I'm going to pop in some needles and let it simmer. So let's see what happens. Well, we're bubbling away now, so we'll pop some of these nice pine needles in. And we're not going to leave it boiling, because that will take all the goodness that we're trying to put into our bodies out of them. So I'm just going to put them in there, give them a little stir round, and then we're just going to let them simmer for a while. So turning the heat down. I keep saying things don't go according to plan all the time, so I might as well be honest with you. The first little pile of stuff I tried to set fire to, I did a brilliant job on it. It went first strike, but I'd forgot to switch the camera on. The second pile I made, brilliant, until I stood up to set the camera off and the wind blew it all away. So what you saw was the third attempt. And as for this tea, well, I haven't tried it yet. See, the truth of the matter is that I don't drink tea. I've existed for the last 45 years on water and alcohol. Sometimes more of the latter than the former. But in a survival situation and needing some vitamins, I'll be quite happy to give it a go. Well, I can taste something. It's not offensive. I don't know what it is. I won't be swapping it for Bacardi and Coke anytime soon, but if that's going to keep me alive, then it's alright by me. There we have it, a few tips how to survive in a pine forest environment. But why make it that difficult? Let me show you an easier way. This axe weighs 1.2 kilos. So suppose we throw away the axe. All we need is this. Bearing in mind that you can live for 3 days without water and 3 weeks without food. We live in a country where you're never more than 2 or 3 hours walk away from the nearest house. 2 or 3 days at the worst walk away from the nearest supermarket. So why would you want to grovel around in the dirt trying to build a fire and eating stuff from the trees, and this is all you need. So what we've got here, we've got enough chocolate and energy bars to keep us going if necessary for 3-4 days. We aren't messing around with all that flint striker business. Buy one of these. It's a lighter. It's easy. Just press it, and if the wind isn't blowing like it is now, it'll light. This one's got a bit of rubber tied round it, and if it wasn't so windy I would demonstrate how well that this rubber can actually burn. Anyway, it'll be long enough for you to start a fire with. And what happens if that runs out? Take yourself some waterproof matches. It's easy. We do need a knife, but we don't need to be walking round like Rambo. Just a little multi-tool with a saw on. That's ideal. And what about that digging up roots? We don't want to be fannying about with that. Take a little bit of paracord with you. 2-minute job. And as for that pine tea, well, it's got vitamins in it, admittedly, but this stuff, packet soup, is a lot more flavourful. And as for the vitamins, little packet of multivitamins. We're looking good for the 3 days now. We've got water, we've got a cup, mug to drink it and cook it in, shelter, survival bag, that'll keep us warm, and it'll also help the emergency services find us with that colour. And a little burner that breaks down, and we can pack it away nice and easily. And of course, when I'm handling knives, my first aid kit, I have a lot of use for that. And if it does get dark, a little torch with some spare batteries is all you need. And all that will fit into this bum bag. Total weight 0.7 of a kilo, nearly half what the axe was. So why would you want to go through all that trouble when with that In this country, you're going to be safe for days. And you know, I still haven't figured out why I'm walking around looking like some wild bushman of the woods, when in 30 minutes time I'll be at home, sat with my slippers on, drinking a cold beer watching Match of the Day. Well, having failed to solve all those problems I was pondering, I'll let you know what we're really here for. Today we're going to have a look at survival techniques in the... Take two. Well, having failed to solve all those problems I was pondering, I'll let you know what we're really going to do. Take three. Well, having failed to solve those problems I was pondering, I'll tell you what we're really going to do. We're going to take a look at 2 or 3 of things that would... Take 4. Well, having failed to... Take 5. I'm not going to use my knife to dig around with. I've put a pointy on this end of this stick. That's a pointy as opposed to a pointy.